Who do you think are the people that would most require this information?
In relation to the official offer, I believe the people who would most benefit and who require the information regarding that would be basically the people who are living in three-bedroom semi-detached houses, because I think they're the part of the population under most pressure at the moment, because anybody who's already, shall we say, heavily dependent on social welfare at the moment don't seem to be suffering the way people who have mortgages, for example. They don't seem to be affected in the same way.
Are you talking about people that have, say, €1,000 mortgage a month and who are struggling to put food on the table over paying their mortgage?
Absolutely. Because what happens is people who are trying to pay maybe a 12 or €1,500 a month mortgage, suddenly if they lose a job, or if that situation or circumstance alters, they then lack the extra currency to take care of things that weren't a problem in the past. So when they adopted all these obligations, these debts, these credit cards, at the time it seemed okay because the job was okay, the money was going okay. It was just after the so-called Celtic Tiger. So the people weren't actually irresponsible in their borrowings, considering the circumstance they were in at the time. But of course, as times have moved on and as the economy has diminished, of course, their mortgage payments have not diminished accordingly. And because the mortgage period was increased in a lot of cases from, say, 20 years to 25 years, even some up to 35-year mortgages, I believe, are out there. Well, there's no way anybody can predict an economic model 35 years in advance based on the existing system. So those people are most at risk of the foreclosure process. So to stave off that foreclosure process, the only real way to do that is to offer the absolute maximum you can after you've taken care of the basic necessities of life, i.e. electricity, gas or oil, food on your table, or maybe all three together, shoes for your children's feet, warm clothes for the winter. After all those essentials are taken care of, whatever you have left, by all means, offer all of that to the finance house.
It doesn't matter what institution it is. If it's a lending institution or bank or whatever, if money is owed, you can simply send in an offer. It doesn't have to be written, okay? And if, for example, if you owe money to a bank for a mortgage, for example, which is, I think people need to get familiarised with this in relation to mortgages. All you got to do, like I said, if you owe €1,000 a month and you can only afford to pay 400, pay them the 400. Don't not pay something. Don't stop paying because you can't make the full repayments. Okay, this is the mistake that people make. They stop paying because they can't.
And a lot of people walk away from their homes, from their businesses.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. This is very simple and uncomplicated. All you got to do, and you don't have to ask permission, you just have to act in a sovereign capacity by taking control and making the decision. And if you can afford to pay 400 a month and feed your family, give them 400 a month. If you can only afford to pay 200 a month, give them the 200 a month, feed your family. That's the priority.
And why can't they refuse?
Well, if they refuse, they, in law, cancel the debt. The debt is cancelled. If somebody refuses an offer for the other party to make restitution, and if they continuously do this, they've actually cancelled the debt in law. That's the whole debt cancelled in its entirety.
So don't panic, because there's a solution. And the solution is to effect payment. Just because you don't have enough to pay doesn't mean you should pay nothing. You should always offer the maximum you can. If you offer the maximum you can particularly before you go into a default situation, but even if you've gone into a default situation or you can't afford to pay, but particularly before, if you know next month you're not going to be able to afford to pay your mortgage or whatever, send them an offer now to say, next month the maximum I can pay is this.
And the thing seems to be that the lender cannot refuse once you start affecting payment.
No. That's very important to remember. When you make an offer to a lender, because they are claiming basically you owe them, you acknowledge this by saying to them, yes, I owe you, and I'm aware it should be 1,000 or 2,000, whatever. All I have is 500 or 50. I'm offering that to you, and I'm acknowledging that this situation exists, and I'm doing my absolute best. My intent is to try to pay you. You cannot be shot down in a courtroom for attempting to do the right thing. If however, you refuse, you're in trouble. Because if you look up intent, you'll see to refuse is to have malintent, to attempt to evade or to avoid. And yes, they will react badly as far as you're concerned in those circumstances.
And what are some of the methods of effecting payment?
Simply, if you have a checkbook, post them a check, okay, of say €400. But pretty much effecting payment, and let's say performing on the contract, is your intent to perform on the contract is key. Not that you have enough to make the payments. It's your intention to perform is the real thing.
So even if you only have 1 cent or €1?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, if you can't feed yourself and sustain yourself on the planet, well, how can they get any money anyway? So if you, you need enough, currency units, whatever, to sustain yourself on the planet with food, heat, and the rest can go towards paying a corporation, a legal fiction entity, paper construct, so you can perform on this debt. So even if it was €100 a month, pay them the €100 a month. But even better again, pay them not every month, but every week. So if you can only afford to pay 100 a month, pay them 25 every week. So the intention to perform on this alleged debt, you're not refusing to perform on this. You've actually increased your intention by fourfold. They can't get a judgment.
You multiply your intent.
Yeah. You can multiply your intent 4 times. Do it every week. Don't wait for it next month. Do it every week. And if you don't want to send a check, go into the bank and lodge it to that account. Okay? But if you're doing it by check, write the account number on the back of the check, just in case things go astray into another account. Write the account number on the back of the check and send it in. To simplify that again, you can just walk into the bank with 25 washers, euros, fill in a lodgement slip, obviously to that account, and slide those washers across the desk, and you get your receipt for the lodgement, and that's it. You performed on the debt. Do that every week. 4 of those receipts, proof, documented proof that you've performed on the debt, not once but 4 times in that month. They can't get a judgment against you to leave your home. And
I think you should make it clear that this is for people who are struggling to feed their family. This is not for people who want to get away with paying their debts.
No. I don't really do give any kind of suggested remedy, let's say, to people who are already dealing in commerce. Because they become mini bankers themselves, don't they? So it's either, if you're dealing in commerce, well, you got to expect the hits. So take the hits. But the only thing you really need to safeguard is your home, your family home. That's all. The rest is a bonus. If you can get other people to slave away and pay you rent and pay you mortgages and other bills for you, well, then you're no better off and different than the banks that have tried to steal it from you in the first place.
Do you want to briefly describe the actual offer?
The offer itself is quite simple. Again, simplicity is key to a lot of situations, as I'm sure people agree. The official offer is simply this: a piece of paper with the words official offer written at the top, to bank, whomever the bank is, from the person's name, to now operate account 1234567, the euro symbol or dollar symbol, wherever you're from, write in the amount, as satisfaction on all account demand obligations, signed by. You would simply staple either the check, the postal order, the bank draft, or indeed, if you really have to, the actual currency note itself, the euro or whatever. Staple it to this piece of paper, fold it, address it to the bank. Don't address it to somebody in accounts, because your contract is not with the guy in accounts. If you're contracted to Bank of Ireland, shall we say, that's who you must send the offer to. Once you send it into Bank of Ireland, they can determine which department or who should get it after that. So send it directly to the bank, and then make sure you can actually perform on it. So don't send in an amount that you can't afford. You must remove ego from this situation. I think that's very important. You might want to pay more, but if you can't actually pay more and you promise to pay more than you have, where are you going to end up? So be realistic. Do your budget for food, clothes, energy, whatever. Send it in, whatever you can afford at the end of that. And if you have 3 or 4 demand obligations, total them up, divide the figure by what you have left, and send each one an equal amount. And I think that's important too. Make it equal between all of them, because if you show favoritism to one over another, potentially you could end up in a court case situation where why have you basically reduced their payment and not their payment? So I think it's equality, right? That's what everybody is talking about. This is basically what MABs used to do. They don't quite do this anymore, but basically this was the process.
Have you heard stories whereby people are walking into banks and handing €5 over the counter or whatever it may be?
Yes, that's another method. This was basically the original method, and I'll give a little bit of credit here to Harry from We the People, www.wethepeople.ie. Now, what simply Harry did is Harry realised this is what the system is made out of. The system is constructed of offer, acceptance, and consideration. And he wasn't able to afford to manage the full payment, whatever it may have been at the time, but he didn't want to show malintent. So he said, I'm going to show positive intent. And he wasn't much for letter writing at the time. He's a man of action, as they say. He likes to do, to demonstrate. So he simply walked into the bank, up to the counter. He said to the girl or the man behind the counter, I don't know which, he took the currency note out and he said, this is to be lodged into account, yada, yada, yada. And he slid it to them. And apparently he's been maintaining that position for 17 years.
Approximately 17 years ago, I had a situation where I allegedly would owe a lot of money, and I had a lot of issues at the time to deal with, so I had to put my thinking cap on very quickly. So probably talking about $250,000 at the time, which was a lot of money, of course. So everything that I had worked for would have been gone very quickly if I had engaged legal opinion or counsel. But I had to do that initially just to handle that situation, because there's another 6 similar situations at the time to deal with, kind of maggots. So what happened was, the idea was to come to an agreement of payment in this particular matter. So the solicitor I had engaged to supposedly look after the situation said that there was a call-up date in the High Court. Essentially, there were two High Court cases and one Circuit Court case all together at the same time. So the Circuit Court case, of course, we're all familiar with the situation where courts are just to deal with money. So the District Court deals with up to 5,000. Beyond that, it goes into the Circuit Court. The ceiling of the Circuit Court is around 38 grand. Beyond that, it goes into the High Court, and the monies are unlimited. Okay, so one Circuit Court and two High Court would have been a wipeout in fees alone. So the Circuit Court case I dealt with. The other two cases were coming up with the solicitor involved. He stated that there was a call-up for these cases to be entered in for a hearing in the High Court, and if I didn't engage him and get legal counsel's opinion, I was going to lose everything. Right? This was the thing. So I said, well, will you not go down to the insurance company and offer a settlement arrangement? Simple, you know. So he said no. So he said, I'll fight hard for you in court. So I said, well, I don't really want it to go to court because, for obvious reasons. Because if you go to the High Court, the fee in the High Court begins at 25,000 for one side and 25,000 for the supposed alleged opposition. So straight away, that had to be prevented. So simply what I did was I went into the High Court, which was at this call-up date was only reserved for barristers to get these cases entered into for hearing dates so they could make loads of money. So I went into the High Court, but just before that, pretty much everything used to do with timing. I had posted a cheque, but no letter, into the insurance company for a certain amount of monies, not too much and not too little. So that went through the system, so it was cash. So I obtained a copy of that cheque, brought it into the High Court for this call-up. So the judge says, well, who are you? I said, well, I'm just the alleged defendant here, you know, and this case cannot be entered. And he said, are you a barrister? I said, no. I said, the case cannot be entered, and why is that? He said, I said, because the insurance company accepted part payment in same. So the judge says, well, where's the proof of this? I said, here, have it in my pocket, which was a copy of the cheque. So that was it. Simple. So the judge says, this case cannot be entered for a hearing. And then the barrister for the insurance company stuck his little head out and he said, I didn't know anything about this. I said, well, you know about it now, don't you? So that was the end of it. Simple.
And ever since then, you've been making small offers.
Oh yeah, well, you see, I did perform on this this alleged debt, right? To the extent that I just hadn't got the resources to perform these quite large amounts of money. Just hadn't got it.
This would have wiped you out, correct?
Well, the Circuit Court already had done that. I just had no monies left. So I just send them in a few washers every week.
And you've been making offers since then?
I've been performing since then. Sure. It doesn't matter if they accept the offer or not. My intent to perform. That's the issue. And that's what people need to know. Your intent to perform on the contract. So to simplify the whole thing for everybody out there who may be in mortgage arrears or whatever, if they have, for example, €1,000 a month to pay on a mortgage, they can only afford to pay 500, and they may not even be able to afford that because they have to feed their families. The main thing is to sustain yourself on the planet. You need food. If you can only afford, for example, €400 a month, well then give them €400 a month. And even to make that better again, don't do it on a monthly basis, do it on a weekly basis. So your intention to perform on the debt has been increased 4 times. So how can they make a legal determination against anyone?
And explain again why they can't refuse.
Well, you see, if they can't refuse, it means they have actually nullified the debt in law. If I owe somebody money, if I owe somebody €100 and I give them €20 and they refuse that offer of payment of making restitution, they've actually cancelled the debt in law.
And has there been feedback from barristers and solicitors?
Yes, there has. If you look at the official offer site on the website, you'll see that the official offer, apparently the tactic they called it, I don't call it a tactic, but they refer to it as a tactic, but they seem to be very impressed with the tactic, and they seem to be of the opinion that there really was nothing anybody could do about it within the system, if you will, because, as I said, you're performing on the contract as best as you can. And yeah, apparently they were very impressed with its simplicity.
Because this method can be sourced in legal material, is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is, in fact, the legal system. This is what they rely upon to bring about court hearings and contracts in the first place. This is the actual construct that they use. Yeah, they rely upon it. So they can't not accept it, because to not accept it literally would destroy their own system.
And many people are going to ask, what about the build-up of interest?
Sure. That possibly, yes, that could happen. In fact, it probably will happen. But what I would say to you is, well, if you're in a dire straits situation and you can't afford a mortgage, well, subsequently what's going to happen is you're going to be either evicted, in which case, well, you've no roof over your head. So will penalties and charges build up on the account? Possibly. But you'll still have a roof over your head. And maybe things will improve down the road, or, you know, but it's definitely better than trying to live outside. And I don't know if you take a look at the weather out here at the moment in Ireland, it's very cold. And, you know, particularly if you've got a young family, you're not going to survive outside. So penalties and interest and all of that stuff building up, sure, but that's okay, because you still have a roof over your head. And at the end of the day, if you end up paying your official offer for 50 years,
I've heard it described as a sticky plaster.
yes, basically it is, really, I suppose. All contracts can be negotiated and renegotiated, thus is the nature of contracts. It's only when you go into breach of contract it becomes a problem. So once you attempt and in fact offer to maintain the contract to the best of your ability, this is the sticking plaster aspect of it. So for example, I call it a sticking plaster because if you cut yourself, you need a sticking plaster, and many people are hemorrhaging money right now. So you need a sticking plaster first to get you to the hospital, if you will. That calms down the problem. Okay, if you consider, you know, if you don't cover the wound, you'll bleed to death, and if you don't put a sticking plaster on your situation, legally or otherwise, you'll hemorrhage all of your finance, and that will be a problem for a lot of people. So yes, a sticking plaster is a pretty good description for it, but as I said, depending on the wound, sometimes a sticking plaster can save your life.
Just remember to keep payments current when possible. It doesn't matter how much.
No, it doesn't matter how much. It doesn't matter how much. Literally, if you can only afford 1 penny, 1 cent, If you can only afford 1 cent, offer the 1 cent. If they say, oh no, that's not enough, keep offering it. Say, it's all I have and I'm offering it to you. That's important. Your conduct is very important. Do so with dignity. It's not your fault. You didn't create the economic bubble. You might have taken part in it, but you didn't create it. You didn't plan it. You weren't in control of what the finance houses were doing nationally or internationally. Let's face it. So there is no shame in this. I need the people to really feel that in their heart. There's no shame in not being able to pay your mortgage in this climate. Absolutely none.
And you're certainly not alone in this country at the moment.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's what's the figures at the moment? Approximately 100,000 families, I think. And that's 100,000 families. They'll say mortgages in the newspapers, there's 100,000 in arrears. But what they forget to mention is that's probably a couple living together. Maybe it's a brother and sister that have bought a home together, or maybe it's a husband and wife and children, or whatever. But there's usually more than one man or woman involved in each mortgage. So you can multiply whatever they say probably by 3 times the amount of people involved. So if that's 100,000 mortgages in arrears at the moment, or maybe it's 90,000, but we're talking maybe possibly 300,000 people who are to be affected. That's a huge portion of the population of this country. It's a massive portion, and that's at the moment. That's not taking into consideration the amount of people who are perhaps about to go into arrears this month, just coming up to Christmas.
Well, there's that report that I mentioned, it's come out last week, that more and more people, after paying all their bills and their mortgage, they only have €70 a month spare.
Yeah.
So, and they're the people not yet in arrears.
Those people are probably very close to going into arrears. And as we heard, there was a terrible story that one family were actually eating cardboard to stave off hunger pangs, which I think is disgusting. To take something in through your mouth that has no nourishment, or almost, I don't know about cardboard, but it has some financial or actual nourishment. Maybe it does somewhere. Some boffin scientist probably works out. But to put something into your system to fool yourself and that it's food, no, that to me is abhorrent and it's repugnant.
And I've also heard reports of banks telling people to pay them before eating.
Again, don't worry about what the bank manager tells you. Worry about your family. Worry about your friends. Strengthen your community bonds. Talk to people. Talk to your neighbours. How about this? Take a piece of paper, put it in your printer, type the following line. I'm struggling paying my mortgage. Are you? Would you like to talk? Print it 20 times, 30 times, slice up the paper, walk around your housing estate and put them through people's letterboxes and let them know that you're willing to come and meet them and talk and say possible solution. Don't look for somebody else to do this. If you're embarrassed doing it where you live, do it in another housing estate. Get on a bus, go across the city, but do something. People need to do something. People need to know that this potential solution is there for them.
And I think people need to realise that they are the power in this country. It's not
Absolutely.
the banks, it's not the institutions. It's
not
the
even close. That's why, for example, even if one was to buy a little blue book called Bunreg na Herne, you can buy it in the Easons. I think it's only €2.90. Even the bank, I'm sure, wouldn't mind you taking €2.90 out of the budget that month just to buy a copy of this. And read the preamble. Just read the preamble alone. That's everything you need to know right there, in my opinion. And apparently they're all good with this. They support this. They believe that's true. So I say, well, yeah, sure, accept it.
Make them an offer.
Make them an offer.
They can't refuse.
No need to get all Italian here, but yeah. Pretty much.
And do you want to just...
Make them an offer they have to accept. That's better.
You can offer them a washer a year. If that's your situation, your predicament. That's pretty much it. And like I say, if they don't accept this, if they return that check, just keep sending them another one. Keep sending them. So when they refuse or return this check that you sent, an offer to make restitution, and they return that offer from you to make restitution, they've pretty much shot themselves in the foot. Because just bring it. See, this will never go to court because they know they can't win anyway. They can't get a judgment, succeed in getting a judgment against you. So it's all fear. The whole thing is constructed on fear. And then he may send somebody a letter and maybe it might have red ink on it. And people, that, you know, it's a psychological scare, you know, people get letters with red ink on it and they think it's going to be more serious. It's just psychology, you know. So you just return them sender, but keep performing on the debt. €25 a week, whatever. That's all. Keep your receipts, and there's nothing to worry about. It's as simple as that. It's as uncomplicated as that.
So there's no need to leave your home. There's no need to shut up your shop. There's no need to go hungry.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And where can one find discussions on the official offer?
It's actually springing up on quite a few websites now, I believe. It's grown legs, as they say. But as far as I know, the first one was on tnsradio.ning.com. Harry has often mentioned it on many radio interviews, and I think he might have even mentioned it when he was interviewed on, I think it was City FM.
Yeah,
I think he mentioned it on that as well. So, I mean, Harry's been, as I said, saying to people for years, if you can't afford to pay, just go in and slide across whatever you can afford. Now, I think it's important that people slide over the maximum they can afford. That way you can stand in a courtroom, put your hand on your heart, and in your own mind and in your own conscience, you'll know you're telling the judge the absolute truth, that you have tried to give them or you have offered them the maximum you have. No judge can take an order or an action against you under those circumstances. And please don't take my word for it. Make a call to a barrister or a solicitor, or indeed buy some really good reading material. You can download some of these free on the internet. This one is a first book of jurisprudence. I consider that essential reading. And if you really want to get a good idea of what the legal words mean, a lot of people are talking about Black's Law Dictionary, etc., etc. This one would be a better buy, in my opinion. This is a dictionary of modern legal usage, and it's by Brian A. Garner, who, of course, contributed an awful lot to the Black's Law dictionaries. So this is a good one, as they say, and you can look up the terms to see how they're used. The definitions of the words aren't always as important as how the words are used in legal terms. But anyway, that's about all I'd say on that.